Hey guys, welcome to Chapel. I know we've got some preview day students in here today that we're really excited, so let's all stand and worship together.
Waiting for you, dance like the weight has been lifted. Places waiting, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is freedom. Come out of the dark, just as you are, into the fullness of His love. For the Spirit is here, let there be freedom, let there be freedom. Bring all of the scars. Come back to communion. Come back to the start. Run into wide open spaces. Graces waiting for you. Dance like the weight has been lifted. Graces waiting. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is freedom. Come out of the dark, just as you are, into the fullness of His love. For the Spirit is here, let there be freedom, let there be freedom. Chains will fall, prison shake at the sound of Jesus' name. Lives made whole, hearts awake at the sound of Jesus' name. Chains will fall, prison shake at the sound of Jesus' name. Lives made whole, hearts awake at the sound of Jesus' name. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. much to offer, Holy One. I'm humbled by all that you've done. And even though I walk through the valley, I don't have to fear. You have called me from my sorrow to gladness, and I have you. What more could I want? So raise my faith a little higher, set my spirit on fire. Lord, we're asking you to move. You're the God of restoration, the one who gives salvation. Oh, let revival come. Let revival come. Oh, let revival come. You are the God who calms the sea, the same God who healeth me. You are the one who makes me strong. And even though I walk through the valley, oh, I don't have to fear. You have called me from my sorrow to gladness, and I have you. What more could I want? So raise my faith a little higher, set my spirit on fire. Lord, we're asking you to move. You're the God of restoration, the one who gives salvation. Oh, let revival come. Let revival come. Whoa, let revival come. Revive me with the joy that you bring, joy that you bring. Revive me with the joy that you bring, joy that you bring. Revive me with the joy that you bring, joy that you bring. Revive me with the joy that you bring, joy that you bring. Revive me with the joy that you bring, joy that you bring. Revive me with the joy that you bring, joy that you bring. So now my hands are up higher. You set my spirit on fire. Lord, we're asking you to move. You're the God of restoration, the one who gives salvation. Oh, let revival come. So now my hands are up high. You set my spirit on fire. Lord, we're asking you to move. You're the God of restoration, the one who gives salvation. Oh, let revival come. Let revival come. Whoa, let revival come. Revive me with the joy that you bring, joy that you bring. Revive me with the joy that you bring, joy that you bring. No praise can define No light can outshine you. No power can defeat you, God. No other one is holy. Yeah. No other one is high and lifted up, God. You are my God, glorious, glorious. God, you are my God, victorious, victorious. From the dawn of time, you reign to the end of days. You're the God who saves. All the earth will shout your praise. You will never change. You're the God who saves. From the dawn of time, you reign to the end of days. You're the God who saves. All the earth will shout your praise. You will never change. You're the God who saves. God, you are my God, glorious, glorious. God, you are my God, victorious. From the dawn of time, you reign to the end of days. You're the God who saves. All the earth will shout your praise. You will never change. You're the God who saves. From the dawn of time, you reign to the end of days. You're the God who saves. All the earth will shout your praise. You will never change. You're the God who saves.
You are my God, glorious, glorious. God, you are my God, victorious, victorious.
God, thank you for this moment here in this space that we can all come together and worship you as one. Even though we're all so different, we have one God, and that is what unites us. Amen.
Where's my podium? There we go. Thank you. To be loved and not known is comforting, but superficial. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear. To be fully known and truly loved is a lot like being loved by God. That's a quote from Timothy Keller. We are in Ephesians, and as others have mentioned, There's so much one could talk about in this wonderfully rich letter from Paul. My passage is Ephesians chapter 3, verses 14 through 21. For this reason I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. It's always a very special privilege to speak to you in chapel. Paul is writing in this letter, but he's also praying. And the bottom line subject of his praying is that they will be filled with love. That the Jews and the Gentiles will become one loving body. They had been two bodies for so long, with an ugly wall of hostility between them, that horribly ugly barrier which Jesus by his death had torn down. He began his prayer in verse 1, if you look at the text in chapter 3, got sidetracked, and gets back to his prayer in verse 14. Michael Plant was going to sail around the world in his yacht, Coyote, and he was going to do it solo. Just a few days out to sea, all contact with Plant was lost. His yacht was discovered, but he was never found. It was determined by those who investigated that he didn't have enough ballast. Ballast is defined as heavy material placed in the hold of a ship to enhance stability. He was lost at sea simply because he was lacking below the waterline. On the outside, everything looked good. Inside, something had happened. Everything can look good in us on the outside. And we can be lacking in ballast. Now, Paul, it seems to me, wants the Ephesians to have sufficient ballast as they sail into this brand new world they have entered. And I believe that ballast, that powerful stabilizing force that he offers them, is love. Strengthened with power through the Spirit in the inner being, fruit of the Spirit is love. That Christ might dwell in their hearts through faith. He's praying that Jesus might be allowed to settle down and make his home in their heart. That's what that means. What would my world, what would your world look like if Jesus were allowed to settle down in my heart, your heart, and make himself at home? How would that affect my world? How would that affect your world? I have to believe that it would have almost everything to do with love. And then he prayed as he wrote that somehow they would be able to grasp the dimensions of Christ's love. How long, how wide, how high, how deep? How wide is the love of Christ? Well, it's wide enough to be everywhere. How long is the love of Christ? Long enough to last forever. How high is the love of Christ? High enough to overlook my sin and my failure. How deep is the love of Christ? Deep enough to handle all my sorrows and all my pain and all my disappointments. My thanks to John Cassetto for that. And then he prays that they will be filled to the measure of the fullness of God. He's praying that the Ephesians would be filled with love. Now, there are so many directions you could go with this text. I'm not even going to get to verses 20 and 21, and they're my life verses. I love those two verses. Because there's something I want to say to you, and I'm going to use Paul's letter to say it. I really want you all to be happy and successful in ministry. All of us on staff want that because we know we need it so badly. But there's something greater that I want for you, and that is that you have a happy, till death do us part, Christ-honoring marriage. Now, you might think, what are your credentials to talk about such a serious subject? I humbly, very humbly offer you two answers. I've been married 56 years, and I'm still deeply in love with my wife. And I'm kind of like the farmer's insurance guy. I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. Actually, young people, there's a third. I truly care about your future happiness and your success. So I'm going to focus on just one little aspect of love, one definition of love, and offer it to you as ballast as you sail through life. Love is kind. Easy to say, but what does it look like? For love is not love until it's seen. Talk about it all you want. Sing about it all you want. Love is not love until it is seen. And one of the ways that it manifests itself, beautiful ways, is kindness. And the little, very fine books, Chicken Soup for the Soul, there's a story about a young boy going into an ice cream shop, and his waitress is obviously not having the best day, and she walks over to take his order. And he kind of takes his time, and then he asks, "How much is ice cream with chocolate sauce on it?" The waitress kind of was a little bit curt, 50 cents. He looks back down and starts counting his money. He said, "How much is it plain?" And she said, 35 cents, hurry up. He said, "Well, I'll take it plain." She brought him the ice cream, he ate it, he left. She went over to collect his dish, and under it was a dime and 5 pennies, her tip. Let me ask you something. Right now in your life, are you more like the little boy or the waitress? In lots of different areas of your life, are you more like the little boy or the waitress? Now, I want you to hear me. From this moment, right now, you and I will never, ever have a reason to be unkind. Love is kind. It cares no matter what. Did you ever withhold love? Did you ever withhold affection, time? Did you ever not talk to someone because they had not performed up to your performance level standard that you expected from them? You may not have ever told them what it is. You may not be able to admit it yourself, but it's there. What does it say? It says, if. I will love you if. A lot of people say that in one way or another. That's why counselors are so busy. And it can manifest itself as early as 2 weeks after the wedding. There's another. I love you because. I love you because you're pretty. I love you because you're handsome and strong and young and vibrant. Things that are all subject to radical change. And I thought, what if God only loved me if? I have never, ever performed well enough for God to have said, you've earned my love, David. There's another. I love you because. All the wonderful things you do. And I've never done enough to earn his love. The last several months I was the minister at Calvary Christian Church. Right after church on Sunday, I would grab a portable communion kit, and I would drive down to Plattsmouth and visit a couple, Frank and Fern. She had suffered a massive stroke. A big hospital bed took up all the living room. Frank and Fern had been married 52 years. And I marveled at the way Frank cared for Fern, how he loved her, how he was so attentive to her, so tender toward her, so patient with her. And as I watched him and listened to him, it came to me that it was as if he was courting her. Can you visualize a man courting a woman? Lying motionless in a hospital bed that fills the living room, a woman who could give him practically nothing in return. I don't know that I ever witnessed a greater example of romantic love. You think he felt like doing that every day, every hour? Of course not. But he had made a choice. Mr. Sapp, Mr. Lee Sapp, whose money, along with his brothers, mostly paid for this building, never missed a day going to visit his wife who had Alzheimer's. He told me one time that it was a good day for them if when she saw him coming, she would get up and hold out her hand and run toward him, making giddy, unintelligible noises. That was a good day. Someone was being questioned as to why they kept going to see their spouse who no longer knew them. He said, "No, she doesn't know who I am, but I still know who she is." Love is kind. It cares no matter what. Love is kind. It expresses itself. Love thrives on carefully chosen words, words that say, "I hear you and I care." Words are to love what blood is to the body. When blood stops, the body dies. When words stop, love dies, and resentment and suspicion are born. Later in the 4th chapter, Paul will write in Ephesians, "Let no unwholesome word come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building up others according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." What are unwholesome words? We know what they are. There are words that quickly come to mind because they are filthy, rotten speech. But what about these? You never. You always. You're just like your mother. You tried that once and failed, remember? Where did you get that dress? What do you do around here all day? What are wholesome words? I love you. Thank you. Here, let me help you. Please, could we try that again? I know you can do it. You really look nice today. You look tired. Is there anything I could do to help? Please tell me all about it. I've got plenty of time. What would the world you live in look like if it were only wholesome words that were spoken? And how about the tendency that couples and even friends can have of slaying their mate in public? Words that cut and slash and hurt in public. You won't be in a relationship very long. You won't be in a marriage very long until you will have plenty of ammunition with which to slay your mate. And you will be sorely tempted to use it. Don't do it because it has never, ever accomplished a single thing. And if you are in a dating relationship and that's begun to show up, putting you down, embarrassing you in public, that is as big a red flag as I would know about. And I think I'd run the other way. Lady Astor and Winston Churchill had that kind of relationship in politics. Lady Astor never missed an opportunity to embarrass Winston Churchill in public. One time she said real loud, "Winston, if you were my husband, I would put arsenic in your tea." Churchill quickly responded, "Lady Astor, if I were your husband, I'd drink it." On another occasion, Winston had obviously had too much to drink. Lady Astor never missed this moment. Of course, she yelled out, "Winston, you're drunk." Winston Churchill quickly responded, "Lady Astor, you're ugly, but tomorrow I'll be sober." I have seen a wife slay, and mostly women do this. Let me say, it's my observation that women mostly slay wives, their husbands, in public. I know it's because they've been hurt, but that's not the way out. I have seen a wife slay her husband in public and watch as all the life is taken out of him. I've watched a wife praise her husband in public and marvel as he just seems to come alive and emerge and grow. Ladies, we men may appear to be macho and strong, and we don't need anything, thank you. But I can tell you men have a tremendous need to be admired by the women in their life. Boxer Jack Dempsey's wife was asked one time, "What's it like being married to a boxer?" And she said, "Oh, I'm not married to a boxer. I'm married to a champion." Love thrives on carefully chosen words. Love is kind, it listens. I believe there are a lot of people who would get well if they only had someone in their life that would listen to them. Massive amounts of love is conveyed through active listening. I was watching a television program one time, and it was a nurse that was being interviewed about her life as a nurse with terminally ill patients. And she was relaying to the audience how they tried to help these nurses, people, learn how to listen with more than their ears, to listen with their hearts. And she talked about the fact that when people came to grips with the fact that they had a terminal illness, that a lot of times some very great things happened in that life. She said, "We had a 14-year-old girl that was terminally ill, and we couldn't get her to talk. When the conversation got so close, she would throw up roadblocks and send it a different way. So we didn't know what she was feeling or what she was thinking." She said, "One night I was on duty, and this girl put on her call light. And she said, I went in, I answered it, I went in, and is there anything I can do to help you?" And she said, "Well, nurse, I've just been thinking, if this hospital were to catch on fire, what would happen to me?" And the nurse said, "Why, we would take care of you. We have procedures. We practice them all the time. You don't have anything to worry about. We'd see that you got out okay." And she said she stayed there a few more minutes and checked this and that and said good night, walked over and flipped the light switch. She said she had gone about 3 or 4 steps down the hall when she realized she had heard something in her heart. And she turned around, went back in, turned on the light, walked over to the bed, and reached down to that young girl and held her in her arms. And she said, "Honey, would this help?" And she said the girl just broke down and sobbed. It was here in South Dakota. A little lady walked up to me and she tore off a piece of paper that was circular. And I had just preached this point. And on that piece of paper were these words: if we listen with our hearts, we'll hear the teardrops before they start. Love is kind. It listens. And guys, that's what you don't do the most, is listen. When a woman obviously wants to talk, and underline obviously, she won't be asking you to fix her, to correct her, to psychoanalyze her, or give her a 5-step program of overcoming the issue that is troubling her. Often, most of the time, all she will want from you is to be heard. A recent study concludes that a leading indicator whether or not a marriage will be successful is how a husband handles his wife's complaints. I have a little comic strip that I clipped out, and it's in my files. It's Grandpa's folding laundry. His grandson comes by and says, "Grandpa, Grandma make you fold the laundry?" Grandpa said, "No. Grandma can't make me do anything. But she can sure make me wish I had." Guys, listen to this. Every woman was once a little girl, and every little girl holds in her heart her most precious dreams. She longs to be swept up into romance, to play the irreplaceable role in a great adventure, to be the beauty of the story. Those desires are more than child's play. They are the secret to the feminine heart. Love is kind. It listens. And it tends to business. And lastly, love is kind. It gives gifts. Gifts that say you are paying attention. Gifts that say I care. Gifts that say I love you, and if I had it to do over again, I would still choose you. Gifts. Love gives them. Now, to you who are single, but will one day be married, and that's most of you, when you meet that someone who begins to occupy a lot of your time and a lot of your thoughts and a lot of your dreams, and they are definitely getting under your skin, before you give anything away, before you allow it to get too serious, please ask, please, will this person care no matter what? Will this person talk to me? Will this person listen to me down deep in their heart? Will this person give me things that will always make me know that I'm still in first place in their life, right behind their relationship to Jesus and the Father? There are many questions that you should ask. I'm just hoping you'll ask those. I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the saints to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. To know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of the fullness of God. He was praying that the Ephesians would be filled with love. Now, if you were to ask me, Mr. Haynes, what's the greatest little nugget that you have found that has made it possible for you to share it with people in their marriage? And what I'm going to share with you would be one of the top 2 or 3. It's written by a surgeon, Dr. Richard Selzer. And this is how he wrote it in his book, Notes in the Art of Surgery. I stand by the bedside where a young woman lies, her face post-operative, her mouth twisted in palsy, clownish. The tiny twig of the facial nerve, the one to the muscles in her mouth, has been severed. She will be thus from now on. The surgeon had followed with religious fervor the curve of her flesh. I promise you that. But nevertheless, to remove the tumor in her cheek, I had to cut that little nerve. Her young husband is in the room with her, and together they dwell in the evening lamplight, isolated from me, private. Who are they, I ask myself, he and this wry mouth I have made, who gaze at each other and who touch each other so generously, so greedily? The young woman speaks. Will my mouth always look like this? Yes, I say it will. It's because the little nerve was cut. She nods her head and is silent. And then her young husband speaks. Well, he said, I kind of like it. I think it's kind of cute. Unmindful of me, he bends to kiss her crooked mouth. And I, standing so close, can see how he twists his own lips to accommodate hers, to show her that their kiss still works. And I remembered that the gods in ancient Greece appeared as mortals, and I pause and let the wonder come in. I don't know if the doctor knows the theological wallop of that or not. The Bible says that no one has seen our God at any time. But it says if you and I love each other, are committed to each other, and are faithful to each other, the world will be able to see something of God in us. I know of no picture it needs to see more than that. Love is kind. Father, thank you. Thank you for your kindness to us, to me. Help us be kind in all of our relationships and to all the people we need. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Take a minute today to do something that we don't usually do, but I think that sometimes it can be really easy for us to forget that this place is more than a school, and we are not just a student body, we are the body of Christ. And I think we need to take some time and cultivate that unity in the presence of God. So we have a couple of communion tables set up on each side, And if you could each just grab a little piece of bread and a little cup of juice and then get into small groups. And I want you to take communion together because it's not about me and God, it's about us and God. And if you want to join in the song after that, if you want to spend some time in prayer, whatever you need to be in the presence of God, do that. And you guys are free to go whenever you feel. Morning when I rise to meet you, in the morning when I lift my eyes, you're the only one I want to cling to. You're the first thought on my mind. Let our voices rise, oh creation cries, singing out an endless hallelujah. From this moment on, join with heaven's song, singing out an endless hallelujah. In the moments where you go unnoticed, in the ordinary day-to-day, all the Spirit calls it life around us, going like arrows to your name. Let our voices rise, oh creation cries, singing out an endless hallelujah. From this moment on, join with heaven's song, singing out an endless only a moment to live this life, like shooting stars, burning up the night, till heaven's open and we arrive. In your presence, Lord, in your presence, let our voices rise. All creation cries, singing out an endless hallelujah. From this moment on, join with heaven's song, singing out an endless to sit here in this moment. And if you're feeling the presence of God, if you're in prayer, I want you to stay there. But if you feel ready to leave, you are free to go.